Okay, so I'm really excited today for a number of reasons. One, Brian's going to be aboard, Burkie, and that's always fun. And it's always a mystery where he's going to be as well. Hey, Zach, what's your latest text with Burkie all about? Do we know where he's going to be?
No clue.
Did you ask him where he's going to be?
Yep.
And he responded with?
Did not hear back.
Did not hear
Nothing.
back. All right. So we'll stay tuned for that. Welcome to the program. So Burkie will be aboard here in, 10 minutes or so. Take your questions, start with news of the day, get all the things in, the big Calgary-Philadelphia trade and what that means. We should park some time to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. Like, what a beating that was. Like, when Winnipeg just decided to turn it on against the Boston Bruins yesterday, just turn the tap, and here we go, front and center Mark-Andre Fleury. One of my favorite players. Have I mentioned that before? Going back to his days with the Barrie Colts of the OHL. Yes, I'm going to be that guy. So we'll get into that a little bit with Burkie coming up in a couple of moments. Also, salary cap's going up. Salary cap's going up large. So next year, 95.5 is your upper. Okay? That's your upper. And then it jumps. And everybody paying attention knows what this one means specifically. In 26-27, it jumps to 104. $104 million. And if you're like me, the first thing you did was you tried to figure out what 20% of $104 million is. And I'll save you the aggravation. It's $20.8 million. So that's what the Edmonton Oilers could be looking at for Connor McDavid times 8. Or any other team for that matter. And then going to 113.5. You know, it was interesting. One of the reasons why there was a lockout in 0405 was because of the outrageous salaries and how much teams were spending in competitive balance. And you had teams like the Red Wings and the Rangers and the Maple Leafs blowing their brains out every single season, acquiring players. And then you had, the Nashvilles and the Ottawas and, the teams that, although they were competitive, couldn't flex the same financial muscle. And I think history will correct me here, or someone in the chat will probably correct me, that the Detroit Red Wings were the leaders that year in spend, 2004. I think it was $95 million. And here we are, 2025, for next season, and finally, we've gotten back. Quick spot quiz, by the way, for everybody. What was the original salary cap? What was the range? What was lower? What was upper? Anyone around the room? Yes, you in the back. Zach, do you know what it was?
No, not a clue.
2005. Low end, $21 million. High end, $39 million. Yes, there were amnesty buyouts. We've come so far. Now you could see one player almost make that next year with 20% of the 104. Which could wiggle a little bit, but basically this is it. $20.8 million is what you can pay someone in 2 years, i.e. Connor McDavid. So what was once the floor, now you can have one player making that. Anyhow, I'm really excited today because I get to play a video that I've wanted to play for a long time. I'm glad I get a chance to do it here. Now, do we have anything from Marc-Andre Fleury yesterday in Montreal? Do you have any vids that you want to play, Zach? Is there anything we should sort of set the tempo, set the mood of this segment here about Marc-Andre Fleury?
Yeah, I've got a clip of him after the
got?
game. I think it's something a lot of people had seen, but it's him getting the ovation from the crowd, shaking hands with everybody. I just thought it was cool listening to the Bell Center. It's a fun moment if you want to play that one.
Fire it off. Let's do that one. It was a wonderful, spontaneous moment. The handshake alley for Marc-Andre Fleury, his last game in Montreal. Let's have a look.
Non, mais ils sont déjà au centre. Exact. Ouais. Ils attendent Marc-Andre. Ils sont tous là.
Teammates with the head no-gees, Montreal, waiting at center ice, led by Mike Matheson.
Et tu
Here
vois, Matheson et Savard au départ.
come the handshakes, the flower. It's a beautiful thing.
Ça, c'est très, très fort comme geste.
100%.
Et tu vois, Matheson et Savard, au départ, ça, c'est très, très fort comme geste. 100%.
Now, we've seen scenes like this before. I will always point at Calgary, Vancouver, Trevor Linden's last game, where Ginla had all the Flames go and shake his hand. We've seen this with retiring officials. Marc-Andre Fleury and Marc-Andre Fleury with an embrace. That's a really nice touch.
Je pense que le Canadien a démontré beaucoup de classe ce soir. Autant l'organisation.
Shutout in his final game in Montreal. Completely beloved in Montreal. Stick taps.
Son retour vers le vestiaire.
So that was the scene last night at the Bell Center. I have always made the joke there are two places that do ceremonies well, the Bell Center and Buckingham Palace. Those are the only two places on the face of the earth where they do ceremonies properly. Now, we talked about yesterday how he's probably the most beloved goaltender, certainly of this generation, and maybe of all time. I'll still maintain it's Johnny Bower, but I'll defer to Flower as well. So 2017, Marc-Andre, I think it was 2017, he was going through his situation with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And as much as every time you saw Marc-Andre Fleury in front of a camera, every time you saw Marc-Andre Fleury interviewed, he had that lovable, charming smile, and he was trying not to insult anyone or share his true emotions, which were intense anger and hatred towards Jim Rutherford and the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are trying to move him out of town. Oh, and by the way, not lost on a lot of people last night, Zach, I assure you, that the idea that Marc-Andre Fleury should still be playing with the Pittsburgh Penguins. His replacements, Matt Murray, Tristan Jarry, nowhere to be found. And there's Marc-Andre Fleury still playing. But I digress. Like, it was ugly between Marc-Andre Fleury and Jim Rutherford. And Rutherford has admitted such, like, he essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, yeah, I know Flower hated me. And that's legit, like, really, really angry. So this little video here that I'm going to play for you that's been sitting on my phone for years. So Colby Armstrong sent me this back in 2017. So he ran into a gentleman by the name of Yvon Barrette at a hockey trade show in downtown Toronto. You know who Yvon Barrette is, right? Denis Lemieux from the movie Slapshot, the goaltender. You know, icing happened, the puck come before the guy hit the board, bang, and the play stop and didn't start up. That guy, okay? So he says, look, can you do me a huge favor? And Yvon, gracious as ever, says, yeah, of course I can do you a favor. What do you need, Colby? He says, look, Flower's in a bad way right now, going through a situation with the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're trying to give him the punt here, and you know he's fighting it tooth and nail. He wants to stay with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Can you send him a video to brighten his mood? So this is the video that Yvon Barrette, Denis Lemieux, netminder for the Charlestown Chiefs from the movie Slapshot, sent. I hope you didn't censor it. Did you censor it?
No.
Good. This is the video that Yvon Barrette sent to Marc-Andre Fleury in 2017. I'm so happy. Have a look.
Hey, Marc-Andre Fleury, trade me right fucking now. Take care.
Can we play that again?
Yes.
It's been sitting on my phone, and honestly, every single time that I need a laugh, you know how you have things on your phone, certain videos, like, okay, I just need a laugh. Like maybe for you, it's Brian Burke saying civilians. Maybe that's going to be your go-to, like for the rest of your life. Feeling down a little bit, just need to pick me up. I always go back to this video. I've watched this thing thousands of times. Let's do this one more time before we move on. Talk about the Philadelphia Flyers.
Hey, Marc-Andre Fleury, trade me right fucking now. Take care.
Look how happy Colby is.
Colby's face.
Okay, one more. I swear, last time. Don't look at Barrette this time.
Okay.
Just look at how happy Colby is. Go one more time. We'll move on.
Hey, Marc-Andre Fleury, trade me right fucking now. Take care.
So that's the video Yvon Barrette sent to Marc-Andre Fleury as a way to brighten his spirits. And Jim Rutherford was trying to get him out of Pittsburgh. Let me just do a quick little look and see what the chat's doing for that one there. Yeah, you guys are stuck in a giggle loop. Yes, McDoust, you know that. Johnny Lazarus, Colby, no, he struck gold there. He sure did. Oh, man.
Yvonne, too, after he says it, he starts giggling and then
he starts laughing. But the funny thing about it is, how many times would he have been asked to send that great scene and that great line to an NHLer?
Yeah.
Maybe never, right?
Yeah.
Marc-Andre, you call Jim Rutherford right now. Okay.
That line in the movie is so good, too, when he does it.
Yeah, and then
tell him.
And then Newman says, no, hang up
the phone.
So Alan Nichols, one thing for all you spermologists out there, you know what a spermologist is?
Yeah, someone who collects things.
Trivia. So Alan Nichols, who played Johnny Upton in the movie, okay, the dude that wore the helmet with the great mustache, my favorite character from the movie, his grandfather is a guy by the name of Riley Hearn. And Riley Hearn was the first pro goalie to win the Stanley Cup. Did you know that? Like, that movie is like riddled with tiny little bits of trivia in it like that. Like, Newman's apartment was Gabby's and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Riley Hearn, Alan Nichols' grandfather, first goaltender to win the Stanley Cup. Anyway, I throw that in apropos of nothing. Brian Burke coming up here in a couple of moments. Hope you enjoyed that. We're going to have to show. You know what? Let's show that to Burkie. Let's just have fun on Friday and show that video to Burkie and get Brian's reaction. In the meantime, I know that like I was watching Barn Burner this afternoon, and the guys were all talking, and Dregs came on, and they talked about the trade. DFO Live had a whack at that pinata today for obvious reasons. Morning Cup of Hockey doesn't do Fridays, but if they did, they would be all over this trade. Just a couple of things that I want to point out here. So Calgary Flames and Philadelphia Flyers with the second shocking trade in as many weeks around the NHL. Last week it was Colorado and Carolina / Chicago. And last night it was the Philadelphia Flyers, with players mysteriously evaporating from the Philadelphia Flyers bench like an Agatha Christie novel. Like they're going on the train, the lights flicker, and characters start leaving. Morgan Frost, sorry, I read a lot of Agatha Christie. Murder on the Orient Express was my favorite as a kid. Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee on their way to the Calgary Flames last night. And coming back the other way, Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Pelletier, a second, and then... And I want to get, like, I want to be part of the conversation for this one. A seventh in 2008. Where does that come from? First of all, like, where does the seventh? It's like, we're not doing this deal unless I get a seventh round draft pick in 2028. Where does that come from? So a couple of things here. One of real note here. You know what? Let's get to the rundown, and then we're going to get into this trade. Daily outline of today's show presented by FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook app provider. Thanks to our friends who help keep this program on the air. Coming up on the show today, Flyers and Flames. We're going to get more into this conversation here in a couple of moments. Brian Burke, it is Fridays after all. Get your questions in now. Ask Burkie, always fun. The Flowers / Denis Lemieux. Yeah, we'll show the video a few more times because, like, dude, it's Friday. Like, have a laugh. It's okay. Like, you know.
Yeah, I left that one in there because I figured we'd come back.
We're coming back to that video. Trust me.
Yeah.
I've been sitting on that video since 2017, and I'm like, I can't play it at the old shop. Not a chance they'd let me do that. And I get here, I'm like, I need to find the right moment. And last night just seemed so perfect. So I got the Colby Armstrong seal of approval. I'm like, Colbs, is it okay? Do you think he'd mind? He's like, yeah, go for it. So we'll get to that. So a couple of things. From the Calgary Flames perspective, one thing you need, and Craig Conroy did a really good bit of business for today for the Calgary Flames, like mainly fueled by Dustin Wolf. The Calgary Flames find themselves flirting with the playoff position. That's great. The other thing the Calgary Flames have wanted to address all season long is the center position, and specifically the birth certificates. They have old centers. Nazem Kadri's 34, Michael Backlund's 35, Kevin Rooney's 32. Like, you look down the middle of the Calgary Flames, and it's an older bunch. And Morgan Frost comes in at, help me, Zach, 25 years old, I believe Morgan is, 25 years old. He comes in, and in comes Joel Farabee on the second chance. And all of a sudden, that's a tidy bit of business for a team that's looking around the Western Conference and saying, you know what, we actually might have a shot here at, one, making the playoffs, and two, giving the kids on our team the experience of what it's like to experience a playoff push and not have your season end after trade deadline. And from the Philadelphia Flyers point of view, now I know they only played a handful of games, but Kuzmenko and Michkov did play together in St. Petersburg in the KHL. I think part of this is, have someone, I don't want to say babysit, but have someone there for Matvei Michkov. This has happened countless times in the NHL with Russian hockey players. One of the more famous ones was Atlanta Thrashers bringing in Alexei Zhitnik to help with Ilya Kovalchuk. But what this does as well, and you can be of two minds here. I was saying this on Sekeres and Price earlier today. You can be of the Occam's razor mind, which is simplest explanation is the correct one. Or you can do the conspiracy grassy knoll, which is, let your mind roam free and come up with your most extreme reason for this deal. Because all of a sudden now, the Philadelphia Flyers have a open center spot. Now, if you believe in letting your mind roam, you say to yourself, well, does that mean they could be courting one of the two in Vancouver? Should we now start to look at the Philadelphia Flyers and say, maybe they're in the mix for one of these two players? Or, and unfortunately, this is where I fall more so than the Vancouver side of things, they're just opening a spot for Jetlachenko next year. That the Philadelphia Flyers have a lot of kids, and the development crew's got to get these guys ready, got to get these minnows ready for manhood, get these little pups ready to start playing in the National Hockey League. And what they're doing is they've opened up a center spot for Jetlachenko next year. It is his sort of right of first refusal. His spot is there if he can earn it, essentially. That's probably what it is, but hey, you want to let your mind wander a little bit this weekend? Philadelphia Flyers have an open center spot. With that, we'll get to our Friday staple, our Friday standby. He is the one and only Brian Burke. He joins us each and every Friday here on the program. Burkie, how and where are you today? I see you're in the home office.
Home office. Everyone has to look at a painting of me.
You know what's better? There's only one thing better than one Burkie, and that's two. And the trademark tie around the neck, too.
My girlfriend arranged an upstairs office, but I couldn't get it to work this morning, so I'm stuck here again. They're all stuck looking at me.
No problem. They get to look at you as if they have blurred vision, too, or double vision. Brian, before we get to, I want to ask you about the Philadelphia Flyers and the Calgary Flames and that trade. I want to ask you about what you were doing exactly 15 years ago today. More on that in a moment. I want to ask you about the Winnipeg Jets, who just had a third period against the Boston Bruins last night and rolled. But I want to play something for you. I'm not sure if I ever played this for you when we worked together at the old shop. But after Marc-Andre Fleury last night in Montreal, beautiful scene. He's got a shutout for the Minnesota Wild. The Montreal Canadiens players are lining up to shake his hand, etc. It's a wonderful moment. I thought, you know what? This is a good place to show this video. So this goes back to 2017, Burkie, when Jim Rutherford was trying to get Marc-Andre Fleury out of town. And one thing I would like to point out, too, the two goalies who they tried to get to take his place are both not heard of right now, and that is Tristan Jarry and Matt Murray. And Marc-Andre Fleury is still playing. I would make the point he should still be a Pittsburgh Penguin, but I digress. So Colby Armstrong, Burkie, runs into Yvon Barrette, who, as you all know, played the character Denis Lemieux, the netminder from Slapshot, and said, look, can you send a video to Marc-Andre Fleury to cheer him up a little bit? He's going through a bad situation with his general manager, Jim Rutherford. Can you send him a video? Burkie, I want to play this for you. We played it for the audience a second ago. I want to get your reaction. This is Yvon Barrette with Colby Armstrong and a video for Marc-Andre Fleury back in 2017. Enjoy.
Hey, Marc-Andre Fleury, trade me right fucking now. Take care.
Never gets old.
It's the best line. That I don't know if I ever showed that to you when we used to work at the old shop, but it's one of those videos that whenever I'm in a bad mood, I just kind of pull out and I play it because it makes me laugh. I want to ask you about Slapshot in a second, but first I want to ask you about Marc-Andre Fleury. Beautiful night last night, last game in Montreal at the Bell Center, etc. The crowd classy as ever, the players classy as ever, all of it. When I say the name Marc-Andre Fleury, what pops to your mind?
Beloved. I think that's the only word. This is the guy. I said this earlier today. It's amazing to me. Marc-Andre Fleury gets a reverence that typically attaches to a guy who spent his whole career with one team. He played for 4 teams, and yet he's revered in all 4, which is very unusual. The guy who moves around usually sacrifices some of that loyalty, some of that reverence, some of that love. But it hasn't happened with Marc-Andre. Everyone loves him. He's had a great career as a player, but more importantly, he's been an upbeat, contributing guy everywhere he's played.
And he's one of the most beloved players of this or any other generation. I was making the point on yesterday's show, when I think of like beloved goaltenders, I always think of Johnny Bower, who doesn't matter if you're 5 or 95, Johnny Bower and you love them. But he is this sort of this generation's Johnny Bower. He's loved by young people, middle-aged, old. It doesn't matter. Now, off the Marc-Andre Fleury page, one of my favorite stories from you is the seconds ticking down. 2007, Game 5. Your Anaheim Ducks are about to defeat the Ottawa Senators for the Stanley Cup. And was it your team services guy who pulled you aside? Who was it?
Joe Trotta, our video guy.
That's it. So what was the line? What did he say to you right before the buzzer hit 0?
I just hugged Henry Samueli, and Henry was yelling unintelligibly. Henry was really excited. He said, "Ah!" And the clock's down to about 3 seconds, and it's ticking, and Joe Trotta yells out, "And the Ducks have won the championship of the Federal League." It was perfect. I'll never forget that. We're about to win the Stanley Cup, and Joe Trotta's doing slap shot.
Yeah. How many times do you figure you've seen that movie, Burkie?
Well, it'd be at over 100. I remember I was playing pro hockey when it came out. Yeah. I just finished my 7 games in Springfield, and my roommate and I went to Arizona on a spring break. We drove from Providence to Arizona, not much fun. But we watched the movie in Arizona, and I said to my roommate, who was a goalie at Providence, Rick Moffat, I said to him, "I just lived this movie for the last 3 weeks, 7 games in Springfield." I knew a lot of the players. I played against a lot of the players that were in the movie. So I felt like I'd been a part of the movie for the whole movie. So I said to my roommate, Rick Moffat, I said, "I just lived this movie in Springfield."
It's interesting, too, because the apartment in the movie, which is Bruce Boudreau's apartment, but I believe he shared, like that was in Johnstown, I believe he shared it with Paul Holmgren. Did you ever talk to him?
I read that somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, because obviously, trying to squeeze the beaver on the nickel till it squeals and save as much money as you can. So guys are living together. So I think it was Gabby, and like just think about this for 1 second. What would an apartment with Bruce Boudreau and Paul Holmgren be like?
I just know Paul Holmgren would be in charge of everything. I worked with Paul Holmgren. I fought him in the summer league. Yeah. Paul Holmgren was my roommate, so we're going out. We'd go out.
Okay.
Now, some Slapshot trivia. You mentioned Johnny from Slapshot. What's his name?
Alan Nichols is Alan Nichols. From Montreal. I played hockey with him. When I worked at the league, I skated with him. No way.
At the outdoor rink in Manhattan. He's a great guy. He's not a very good hockey player.
That's okay. You know what? It's funny too. Like in
and Tim Robbins skated with us too. And then when I worked with TSN, James Duthie did a reconstruction of the whole.
I remember that.
The penalty for that, eh?
Yeah. The opening scene. Yeah.
You sit by yourself, you feel shame, then you go free.
You see, Alan Nichols has always been one of those people that I've always wanted to meet because to me, every single line he delivers in that movie to me is perfect. He's my favorite actor in the whole thing, and every people ask me, who do you want to interview, who do you want to meet, who do you want to talk to? I always say Alan Nichols. That is my ultimate guy.
We were playing with him. Dave Nonis was skating too. We said, we got to get Johnny a goal. So he set him up for like 4 or 5 good chances in a row, point blank. He couldn't score, so I said, "Screw it, that's it. No more, Johnny. You're on your own."
Well, it's funny. I was telling the story that his grandfather, Riley Hearn, who played for the Montreal Wanderers, was the first pro goalie to win the Stanley Cup. So there's a legitimate Stanley Cup I guess what an NHA then, hockey association with Alan Nichols. So he kind of comes by it legitimately. He wasn't just
what a great guy. He
Yeah.
was great in the movie.
Oh, it's tremendous. They all were. Before we get to some questions, I want to ask you about the trade yesterday. So Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee go from Philadelphia to Calgary. So a nice little bit of business there. They get a little bit younger in the middle. Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Peltier, a second and a seventh go back to the Philadelphia Flyers. Can I ask you something really trivial here, Burkie, from a general manager's point of view? That 7th round pick in 2028. I always wonder about these. Like, where does that come from? Like, I can't imagine, Briere and Conroy on the phone and Danny saying like, we're still not there yet, Craig. I really need a 7th in 2028. Like, Burkie, where does that come from?
Just wanted to add something to the ledger, make it look more even. Our scouts used to fight over that last pick in the draft. I hated it. Mm-hmm. I tell the scouts every year, I'm trading our 7th round pick this year. It used to be a 9th. I'll trade our 9th round pick this year. We'll leave early, and next year we get 2 in that round. They're like, no. We have a guy we like, usually a tough guy or a goalie or a Euro that they don't think anyone's seen. So these scouts would argue over the last pick in the draft for each team, 7th round pick, and I'd be like, if I trade the pick now, we can leave. Nope, we got to stay. So, and then the league told me they'd fine me if I left early. So we just stopped worrying about it.
Is there, like when you would get to those other picks, here's what I'm curious about. There are some teams that allow their scouts to have, I guess for lack of a better term, passion picks, where the general manager will say, you know what, Western Scout, this one's all yours. What's your passion pick? Did you do that too? Like pick a scout in different rounds?
Especially if like our French guy gotten screwed all night. Yeah. We hadn't gotten any French picks, and he had a guy I really liked. We'd say, you're up. We kind of put you by the side all day. Yeah. Western guy had a guy he liked. So we do a passion pick or a courtesy pick to a guy. But some of those guys play. And actually, they identify one skill. They say, look, this guy can't skate. He's got a tremendous shot, or he's really really tough. We can work on the other parts of his game. So you take a flyer on the guy. But it's funny, the arguments you'll have about the last pick you have in the draft every year. It's unbelievable the passion these guys have for that.
Oh, listen, that's the last 3 years of their lives following that guy, right? And following all these players. Yeah, you're right. What do you make of the deal specifically? I mean, the one thing that I look at with Philadelphia is they've opened up a center position for some. Maybe that's just holding for Jet Lachenko to step in next year, their first rounder from last draft. How do you look at this deal?
I like Craig Conroy's end of the deal, but I think Philly's is being blasted. I said this earlier today. The tendency seems to be you want to declare a winner and a loser on every trade. Yeah. And a lot of times you've got to judge a trade with a calendar, not a stopwatch. But these people all say, Flyers won the trade or Calgary won the trade. Yeah. And I look at it a little deeper than that. So I think short term, I like Calgary's end of it short term. But Farabee makes $5 million. That's not a cheap guy to hope he comes around, gets back to form. That's not a cheap gamble. I like the young kid, LaPierre, going back to Philly. I like second-round picks. I generally like them. Yeah. So I think it makes sense for both teams. You're dealing with – remember, when you hang up the phone after a trade, both GMs turn to the rest of their staff and say, that's a good deal. So Calgary hangs up the phone. Craig Conroy turns to Brad Pascal and says, that's a good deal. Flyers do the same thing on their end. So someone's going to be wrong over time. But initially, I see the merits of both. I'm not being a lawyer here saying, they both won. I'm saying I like short term. I like Calgary's end of it. The long term, it depends on what the Flyers do with that pick and what LaPierre turns into.
One of the things that, and I always wonder about teams that make trades based on where they're at that moment. Like the expectation for the Calgary Flames this year was, they're going to be in the conversation for first overall pick. Like they're going to have a high pick. No one expected them to be this competitive, this deep into the season, but they find themselves competitive. Dustin Wolf has been exceptional. I know they're having a hard time scoring goals, but still, this is a Calgary Flames team that for a lot of people has exceeded expectations. So I look at this deal and I say, even if the Calgary Flames were quote unquote bottoming out, I could still see them making this deal because Morgan Frost is only 25 years old. And their centers are a 34-year-old Nazem Kadri and a 35-year-old Michael Backlund. they needed to get younger at that position. So I don't look at this as some would and say, this is the Calgary Flames thinking they have a shot here. I say to myself, this is the Calgary Flames saying, yeah, this is a trade for right now. We're getting a good player who can play, but also we need to get younger down the middle.
Yeah, I think you analyze it properly. I was on listening early, and for once, I think you got it right. Sorry, Jeff, but I had to have to agree with you. But remember, too, there's very few trades will put you over the top. It's not like getting Chris Pronger in the summer of 2006 and saying, okay, now we're a legit contender. This doesn't put them over the top. It makes them better. But it's a steady progression, and they're already playing with house money. Like you said, they're already playing way above whatever level anyone thought they would. That's Ryan Huska. Everyone says it's Wolf, and Dustin Wolf's having a marvelous year. But Ryan Huska's the head coach of that team. Yeah, I worked with him. He deserves a lot of the credit. And no one talks about him.
He's been exceptional. Listen, he was exceptional in the Western Hockey League. He's been exceptional with the Calgary Flames as well. Let me ask you this one. This comes to us from Janet Crosscheck. Hey, Burkie, which player or players got away from you that you were angling for and almost got? Who's the one that got away?
Well, we got in real late, and there's some dispute about this on Mike O'Connell's part, but we got in late on Joe Thornton, and I think if we'd gotten in earlier, we could have got him. And he's obviously gone on and had a great career. He's a great guy. We got in too late on him. I'll take the blame for that. According to Mike O'Connell, he'll dispute that version of things. He says we were never in it at all. But I spoke to him about making this trade with Bob Murray sitting beside me, so pretty comfortable in saying that would be one. We tried to trade for Keith Tkachuk, too. We tried to trade for Keith Tkachuk and weren't able to get him. And I think even though he was on the back nine then, we really this.
Was that the year that he ended up going to Atlanta? Do you recall?
I don't recall. I think that's right, but I don't know. It was the year before we won the Cup. It was 2006.
Okay, so one of the other thing, I want to cram as much in as we can here with you. Oh, and by the way, Johnny Lazarus had a great time with you last week. He was like, I can't believe I get a chance to talk to Brian Burke. This is so cool.
He's a good guy.
And yeah, he is a good guy. And Jasper was beautiful. That was my first time out there. I know you've been before. You mentioned with your family. It's an absolutely gorgeous part of our country. Okay, so do you, Brian Burke, know where you were 15 years ago today?
No.
You were on stage announcing that the Toronto Maple Leafs had just acquired Dion Phaneuf, Keith Ollie, and Freddie Sjustrom.
Or
Matt
Stajan.
Yeah, go for it.
Ian White.
Yep.
Jamal Mayers.
Yep. One more.
Matty Hagman.
You got it. Nicholas Hagman. Yeah.
Nick Hagman. Yeah.
Nick Hagman.
Yeah. That was a fun day. We made that deal. Daryl Sutter and I shook on that deal on Friday. And he said, well, I have to meet with ownership and explain it to them, so we'll have to announce it Sunday.
Yeah.
All seven players played that night. But Daryl Sutter is such a good guy. He said, we'll go sight unseen. Whoever gets hurt is hurt. So if you get two guys hurt, we're making the trade. Yeah, we did it sight unseen. We shook hands on a deal over the phone Friday and made the deal on Sunday.
How rare is that? Because even just looking at last night with the Calgary Flames and the Philadelphia Flyers, all of a sudden, Morgan Frost is playing in the first period, and then somewhere in the second, Morgan Frost vanishes from the bench as the deal is getting put together. How rare is it, though, for that? I can't even imagine it happening now, but how rare would it have been to do a deal on a Friday, all seven players skating on a Saturday, and then you announce a deal on a Sunday? Like, are you not nervous? Are you not nervous?
Well, we were. We watched the game. Then Keith Ollie was playing in the American League, so he played late. Yeah. I had sent someone to that game. I had Mike Penny call me the second the game ended. Yeah, we're okay. We got through it healthy. But I had that much faith in Daryl Sutter that if we had to do the deal and I had to trade a player with a broken leg, he'd still do it. We both took the same risk because it's almost the same number of players involved. Now, some of the players involved, I wasn't worried about getting hurt. Some of them played a way that they might have gotten through it okay. But Dion didn't, Keith Ollie didn't, and Jammer didn't. So I was nervous about those guys.
Who is the hardest player to give up in that deal for you?
Well, none of them were hard. And when I got to Calgary, Matt Stajan came to see me. And Matt Stajan's a great kid.
Yep.
Came to see me. He said, "Should I be nervous? You pedaled me once." I said, "Matt, I traded you to get Dion. I would have put 4 of you in there if I had to. I liked you. It wasn't about you. It was about getting Dion." So to me, Matt Stajan was hard to give up, but not that hard just because Dion was in the deal. But putting Matt Stajan on a plane, that wasn't fun. He's a great kid.
Yeah. The one thing I always loved about Stajan, when the Maple Leafs were going through a dark period, he was always the guy at the end of the game who would always get out there, especially on the road, out in front of the media. Yeah. He was always a guy, and there were a lot of veterans on that team too, who took
his wife is lovely too. Just a great guy to have on a team.
I always thought that, and maybe it's just my naivety, but and watching him at the World Junior, I always thought that Keith Ollie was going to be a hell of a player. I really did. I thought Keith Ollie was going to be really good.
That deal was held up for a whole day because Daryl wouldn't do it with Keith Ollie in it. And so I'm not doing it without him. And so Daryl called me back on the Thursday, I guess it was the Friday, and said, "Okay, we'll put him in." I forget what we tweaked to make that happen, but Rancher was his nickname, Keith Ollie. Great kid.
Yeah.
His dad fell through the ice in a tractor and almost died. Keith Ollie dove in and saved his dad, dragged his dad out of the water and saved his dad's life.
Wow.
So Keith Ollie had a good career, but I thought he'd be a much better player than he was. He got banged up a bit, but he was a great kid too. That was a fun trade. It was nice having him around.
I always remember his fight with Mark Frazier because it was Frazier and Ollie. Frazier and Ollie. Yep. Here we go.
Yep. It sounded like Frazier and Ollie.
Here's an interesting one. In a year where we know the cap is going up drastically next season, how much does it change the thought process of a GM looking to make moves at the deadline? Like, look, Burkie, like next year it's 95 and 95.5. Then it jumps to 104, and then it goes to 113.5. I was reminding everybody, and you know this, going back to the 04-05 lockout, coming out of it, the new salary cap, the low end is 21, the high end is 39. Holy smokes, here we are at 95 and 70, and then the year after it's 104 and 76. How much does this change your thinking if you're a manager right now?
Well, I think one basic change took place in the NFL a couple of years ago by percentage of cap. They started thinking in terms of, forget what the amount is, percentage of cap, the 20% maximum you can have in the NHL. And so agents started coming in and saying, we need 20% of the cap or 18% of the cap, and that equates to this amount of money. It changed conceptually, and I think the younger and analytics-based guys in the NHL think that way now. So it does change your thinking. And these guys that sign 8-year deals, they got stalled by the pandemic, but they're almost all going to get left in the dust with these new deals. So I know there's a risk. There's some security getting a 7-year deal. But I remember Kirby Puckett was the fastest player in Major League Baseball, I believe. Check my math, or Zach can.
Great hitter.
Fastest player in the history of Major League Baseball to get to $1 million a year. He took 1-year deals every year. Just bet on himself.
Normally we see players, I think the term that you managers use for that is evergreen deals. Like, I'm just going to go on a 1 year and a 1 year and a 1 year and a 1 year. But normally we see that with players at the end of their career. Oh, this guy's on evergreens. Yeah, he's not going anywhere. He's just on evergreens. But you don't see that. You don't see that when players first hit free agency.
But you look at the guys who do 5-year deals with the cap going up. And mind you, Jeff, all the league is predicting is what that might look like. They're not saying what it's going to look like. It might be less than 105. Yeah. They're saying that it's going to go to whatever and then 105. That's speculative at this point, but it's going to go up, clearly, $5 million plus a year. That's a good thing. That's what the league has always wanted, to tie the cap to the revenues.
Yeah.
And we'll see. But I think you're going to see people are building that in now, doing their projections, saying if you're going to sign this guy, you're going to sign that guy, it's got to be X. And it's going to be X plus Y, X plus 5%, X plus 6%. So you're going to see the ceilings move up. The top guys will be left in the dust.
Our producer, Zach, says, Puckett was the first to get $3 million a year.
Yeah, I thought it was something like that. He was the guy who he bet on himself every year.
I like
Great
that.
ball player. Former Minnesota Twin, I might mention, growing up there.
Yes, I know. One of your favorites. I get Rod Carew, one of your favorites, too. He's one of my favorite Minnesota Twins.
He stole home base 7 times one year. no one will ever do that again.
No, he was remarkable. I don't know. The shortstop in Cincinnati was pretty fast, too. Let me. One of the things that I've always wondered about the salary cap. Maybe you have an answer for this, but I haven't been able to get an answer for this one. And it's a very hypothetical question. And moreover, Burkie, it's unlikely. But humor me for a second. Let's say that some player signs starting next year for 20% of the cap, the maximum allowed. Okay? What happens if the cap goes down? Does the player's compensation go down with it? Or is it locked in because they've already signed the deal and you're not allowed to change contracts? Again, highly unlikely, completely hypothetical, but listen, who predicted the pandemic? Like, if the salary cap goes down and you're locked into a player at 20%, what happens to that contract? Because technically he'd be making more than 20% of the cap.
I don't know the answer to that, but I would guess that the league has said whatever you sign, you're stuck with that. If it goes down and it becomes 23%, you're probably stuck with that. The league doesn't allow amendment of contracts to up or down, which is a good thing. Otherwise, they try and beat guys down all the time.
For sure.
So, no, I don't think you could do anything about that. Don't forget, I want to talk about that article that ran.
Don't worry, we're getting there. I know you're hot about it, and I don't blame you. We're going there. But I do want to ask you about the Winnipeg Jets. This team has been marvelous. Well coached. The netminder is all world, best goalie in the NHL right now, best goaltender in the world right now. And Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele snaps in too yesterday. I'm not sure if you caught any of the Winnipeg-Boston game last night, but it just seemed, and I always admire this about teams. I admire this about the Edmonton Oilers in the 80s. When you scored against them, it almost seemed as if they got offended that you tried to score on them, and then they would just start filling the net. That's what happened with Winnipeg yesterday. Like, at a certain point in the game, they just said, enough of this, and dusted the Boston Bruins. Do you have a thought on this Winnipeg Jets team right now?
Yeah, I did a lot of TV surfing last night between the Boston game. I watched the Ottawa's game, which was really exciting. I watched the women's game, which was great. So I was doing a lot of surfing last night. But, yeah, the Boston game, to me, Winnipeg, Kyle Connor is the best player in the league that no one talks about. Yeah. There are better players than Kyle Connor, but I'd like to know who they are. And he's an unassuming guy. I said this on Sportsnet. He looks like he should be performing at a coffee house. But he's one of the best players in the league. And I like the way they answered back. Scheifele answered back hard last night. Yep. I like the way they jumped on Boston and restored the lead and went to, I think, from 2-2 to 4-2 in no time, like 16 seconds. They've got a really good team. They've got a really good coach, a new coach, but he's really good.
Yeah.
They got good personnel, and everyone likes the Winnipeg Jets because of Mark Chipman. Everyone likes the Chevy. All their personnel, their owner and their GM, they're all good guys. They're all community-minded. Everyone likes those guys, so everyone's pulling for them.
You know what I wonder about the Winnipeg Jets, mentioning Kevin Cheveldayoff? We've seen Cheveldayoff make some moves at deadline, Niederreiter, Toffoli, etc. We all know about the history of playoff futility with the Winnipeg Jets. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff right now, again, I'm not a manager. I'm just talking shit from the back seat. If I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, you know what I do at deadline, Burkie? Nothing. I don't change this thing a bit. It seems like they have everything. You pray for health. You try to bubble wrap players, whatever, rest them down the stretch. If I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, I don't do anything. What if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff right now, Burkie?
I think your players want you to see you do something, even a tweak or a depth move, add a little toughness or whatever. Add something so that your players look at each other and say, there's Chevy trying to give us the best chance that we can have. Mm-hmm. So I always try to do something, even small. Even the year we won the Cup, I added Mayday late.
Yeah.
So I think you got to try and add something just to tell the players that you're not asleep at the switch. But I agree, especially with the goaltending, they're a tough team to beat right now. They can score. Multiple lines can score. They work real hard. They put a rookie in the game last night. The kid's from the Rhode Island area, Ford, played at Providence.
Parker
he scores
Ford.
His first goal in his first game. How about that one?
It's great.
Was cool.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story. Parker Ford is the kid's name. A couple more here before we let you go, and I'm going to get you to talk about that. The issue from last week. This week in Ottawa was awkward for Michael Andlauer. So there was the announcement there's going to be a couple of exhibition games in Quebec City at La Centre Videotron. And he mused about, well, you know what? We play regular season games in Sweden. Why can't we play regular season games in Quebec City? And then the mascot showed up, Spartacat, with a half Ottawa Senators, half Quebec Nordiques jersey, and Ottawa Senators fans did not see the fun or humor in any of it. And Lauer did the mea culpa, like this was a misstep, he said, by him and Cyril Leader. I mean, listen, you've managed teams, you've made decisions like this before. As you're watching this, Burkie, what's going through your mind as you're watching Ottawa have a tough time off the ice?
Well, I love mascots, but I hate them too. And I think they can do a lot of damage unintentionally. Mm-hmm. That wasn't smart, I don't think. But I think the notion of playing regular season games in Ottawa, especially when they're not selling out, they're trying to gauge the depth of that market. I could see that making some sense. I would have had the league announce it, though, not the teams. Would have had the NHL announce, we're going to play a couple of regular season games there. I think people in Ottawa could understand, okay, we're not selling out. It's a market we'd like to develop. Everyone would like to see more Canadian teams. They could probably live with that. But the way it went down, people had a sour taste in their mouth about it. I get that. You got passionate fans in Ottawa. They love their team. They don't want to hear about the team might move. I don't think that's what anyone intended. I don't think another team in Quebec City makes sense anyway. But that's I thought it made some sense, but it was handled poorly.
Real quick before we get to the article, what did you make of Jim Rutherford this week, president of the Vancouver Canucks, essentially saying, we're not going to solve this problem here. We have to just try to win a trade, knowing full well that we won't.
I think, again, you look at this. They've tried everything else. They tried to deny it. They had the players in and had meetings. They've done everything. They took the players out front. They've tried everything. So this, to me, is Jimmy Rutherford just saying, enough speculation. This is what's happened. We have a rift. We're going to address it if we have to. We'd like to not, but I thought just let's call everything out in the open, and that this will draw up interest. If someone on the sideline said, I don't know about the innuendo, now they know Jim Rutherford's at the shop open for business.
The one thing that I did sort of wonder about, Burkie, is I wondered if this move, because I always try to look for motivation, right? Like you've taught me this, the times we've talked about running teams. You know, who is being served here? What's the end goal? No one does this frivolously, and it's usually done in concert with the owner. And the one thing that I wonder about too, do you think this is a way perhaps to get JT Miller, because like they're shaming the players publicly here. Do you think this is a way to maybe get JT Miller to add more teams that he'd allow himself to be traded to?
Yes, I think that's one of the motivations is, okay, first off, right now, nothing's working. The team's working right now. They've won 4 in a row, I believe.
3 games, yeah, three games.
Good for them. And it's nice for the league. They're in a playoff spot. For all this turmoil, they're in a playoff spot. So I think what they're saying is nothing's working. Let's be honest about the opinion. And 2 things might happen. The players involved might say we'd be more open to moving. Jimmy Rutherford just laid it all out for us. And the other teams that are thinking on the sidelines, especially now, remember, when the ice comes out in the lake, one piece moves first. Then they all start moving. So that's first big deal that Colorado made with Carolina. That started in motion the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. It's going to be busy now for a little bit, I think. So I think it's also shaking loose the teams that have been on the sidelines now. Jimmy Rutherford said, we are open for business. These players are both available, one or both. And so I think it's a smart thing to generate some interest. The worst it can do is they're confirming what the world already knew.
All right. As we wrap up, last week on the show, it was me and Johnny Lazarus in Jasper. And there was either a question or it was a question about Morgan Riley. And you told me this before too, how in that 2012 draft, you guys had Morgan Riley first overall. Like if you guys were selecting first, you guys were taking Morgan Riley. It wasn't that you look back now and say Morgan Riley was the best player in that draft, but at that time, you look at the rankings for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Morgan Riley is number 1. I will open the floor to you. What happened afterwards?
Well, to me, first off, I don't usually rant about stuff that's in the media because I don't generally care, except I thought this was a real perversion of the truth. We were talking about that draft. There was a question about that draft. Right after the draft, I said, we took Morgan Riley at 5 or whatever it was. And I said to the media, we had him rated number 1 of that group. And that's all I said. And people said, you didn't have him number 1. I said, yeah, why would I have announced we picked him number 1 or had him ranked number 1 in that group of 5 players? Turns out he was the best player in that group of 5. That's all it was a discussion about that group of players in that context. Mm-hmm. So some clown writes back and says, Brian Burke said, and I quote, and I'm not saying the quote is inaccurate, but we're talking in context. He said the best player in that draft was Morgan Riley. We're talking about that draft. Now, the Hockey News wrote a subsequent article, got it exactly right, and said, that's what they're talking about. But this clown says, Brian Burke said he's the best player in the draft. What about Vasilevsky? Well, I didn't say Vasilevsky wasn't as good as Morgan Riley. I love Morgan Riley, but so I don't take the media to task very often. But I thought, this guy can't be that stupid. So he's got to be that vicious instead. So it's someone who can't be stupid enough to say that what I said is what he thought I said. It's more, let's throw Brian Burke under the bus if we can. That's all that touched my nerve about it. But I could care less otherwise.
One of my favorite stories, and the player will remain unnamed, but there was one player in the NHL whose nickname was Two People, because as the person who gave him the nickname said, I'm calling him Two People because one person can't be that stupid. So his nickname became Two People. And that stuck with him for his time in the NHL. Burkie, what's your weekend look like, pal?
Watch some hockey, going to the women's game tomorrow. The women are playing tomorrow at 2.
Yep.
Can't wait to get there.
Should be fun. You mentioned the game last night, the Toronto-Montreal game, Marie-Philippe Poulin with the shootout heroics. And front and center was your favorite player, Erin Ambrose.
Yep, I love her. She's awesome. And Laura Stacey came back from injury. She had a big night, 3 points. What a great player she is.
They always rib her about going offside. That's like the big thing with Laura. It's like, it's just, can you stay on side? Can you stay on side?
Yep.
Thanks, Burkie. You're the best. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, pal.
Okay, thank you.
There he is. Brian Burke joins us Fridays here on the sheet. There was a lot in there. There was a lot of stuff, including a shot at someone who took Brian's comments last week on the show here. Very much out of context, Zach. Very much out of context. I tend to get focused when I talk to Burkie, so I apologize for ignoring the chat. I'm sure there were some good things in there on our YouTube chat. Anything stand out from the Burkie conversation for you?
Yeah, I mean, just obviously I was very interested about the salary cap and how you approach it as a GM going into this. You know, my thinking behind it is I wonder if GMs look at it and say, hey, this player, maybe they've got an extra $1 million that I wouldn't be willing to take, but you know what? It's going up next year. Maybe we've got some throwaway money. And I just thought it was interesting, Burkie breaking down kind of, you know, how you look at some of these things. And then your question, about the cap going down and what happens is like,
what happens?
Never thought about that.
It's highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely, but if you sign someone at 20% and all of a sudden their contract is 22%, because the cap's gone down and you're not allowed to change contracts, what happens?
Because you're
Jessica
not allowed to go in the chat there.
What did Jessica say? Did Jessica have an answer for it? She's like super smart.
No, it was a good question, actually. It's something, I mean, nobody would have the answer to right now, but it's an interesting one. Jessica asked about if in a future CBA, and I'm paraphrasing, but along the lines of like, would they negotiate to have players' salaries tied to the percentage of cap rather than an actual AAV, which I think is a really interesting question, right? Like Marner comes up, he wants 18% or 17%, and then it goes up the next year, his salary goes up, the league goes up, they go up.
And what if it goes down?
Right, then it would go down too.
Again, highly unlikely. Great question by Jennifer. No, because I think the idea. I apologize, Jessica L. I think the idea is that you want to lock someone in early and then get value towards the end of the deal. On them. But that is like, I'm sure that idea has been brought up by the Players Association before. How about just locking me in at this percentage, not this number? It's an interesting idea. Yep. How about this one? Yeah. You know, I was watching David Warsofsky on Morning Cup of Hockey yesterday, and one of the things that I was thinking about, now he's a ex-player now turned agent, but agent for coaches, One of the things that I've always wondered about, because the salary cap is, listen, even though the salary cap is there because it helps with franchise value, because you're fixing your costs, it's always presented as this is a mechanism to ensure competitive balance. So if you take that a step further, not every team is able to afford paying a coach $6 million, right? Or $5 million. There are $5 and $6 million coaches, but not every team can afford to pay those prices. One of the things that I wonder about, any coach listening, cover your ears right now. You will hate this. Maybe I'll ask Burkie this one next week. Should there be a cap on coaches' salaries? And that it includes the salaries that you're carrying from coaches you fired. Like Johnny Lazarus asked a really good question on the show with Wasowski yesterday, where he said, how does that get, like if you fire like Jim Montgomery and then he signs with the St. Louis Blues, how do you work out the compensation? Like there is I can recall when the Pittsburgh Penguins fired Dan Bylsma, the Florida Panthers, and honestly, Zach, I want to say it was like $1 million. The Florida Panthers essentially tried to steal Dan Bylsma by just offering him like a really, really small contract, figuring that Pittsburgh's picking up most of the freight and they're going to get a good coach on the cheap. And the NHL, like the NHL has stepped in to say like, no, you have to pay this amount of money for this coach, and no, you're not going to go on the cheap and have the other team pay it. But I thought it was a really interesting question, how that gets negotiated and how that gets worked out. And one of the things that it reminded me of is one of my favorite people to deal with in hockey was Tim Murray. I loved Tim Murray. I loved when Tim Murray ran the Buffalo Sabres. Tim Murray was no nonsense. Do you remember the Philadelphia draft, the Aaron Ekblad draft, where the Buffalo Sabres selected second and they took Sam Reinhart? And he went up and all he said was, there was no like, I'm going to thank everybody at the Anchor Bar who's at our watch party and Sabres ticket holders and congratulations to the whomever for winning the Stanley Cup. Blah, 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 blah. Tim Murray walked up and said, Buffalo Sabres take Sam Reinhart. And that's it. It was awesome. And then at the Top Prospects game, which that year would have been at the Meridian Center in Niagara, I said, like, Tim, on behalf of everybody who was watching and at the draft, I want to thank you for giving us a great moment because you were hilarious. He goes, yeah, you know what? I want to set the record for fewest words said on stage. I said, really? What's your plan? And Tim said, I want to go up there and say nothing. I'm like, how are you going to announce a pick and not say anything? He goes, this is my dream, but they won't let me do it. I said, what's that? He goes, the pick's already in, so everyone knows, right? He goes, I just want to walk up there, get on the stage, go to the podium, point to my player, and walk off the stage. Just want to go and point and walk. I love Tim Murray. But the story that I heard about, yes, right? Yeah, let's go. But they're like, no, they want the announcement. You got the jersey and the hat and the whole deal. It's a big marketing thing, so you can't. So Tim Murray, this was a story that I was told. When he got gonged from the Buffalo Sabres, and subsequently, I think he invested in Canopy and made like a pile of dough, like right before the pandemic. So I think he sort of sits around and counts his money all day. I think. I'm not 100% sure. I would love to get Tim Murray on this show. Nudge, nudge, producer. I would love to get Tim Murray on this show. Nudge, nudge, producer. I would love to get Tim Murray on the show. So the story that I was told, was that subtle? Or was that, I just sort of slid that?
Yeah.
Okay. The story that
Jeff wants Tim Murray on the show.
Might want Tim Murray. The story that I was told was when he got fired from the Buffalo Sabres, I think it was the Philadelphia Flyers who offered him, and this would have been probably when Chuck Fletcher was running the Flyers. I think they offered him either like a consultant job or AGM or something along those lines. And Murray didn't take it because he wanted every single penny he was owed from the Buffalo Sabres. He wanted every last dime from the Buffalo Sabres. He was not going to go somewhere and have them like, okay, we'll work out the compensation here. And no, I'm getting every last penny out of the Swords.
Fair enough.
How do we start talking about this? How do we start talking about this one?
How did we get there? Oh, salary cap and percentages.
That's Jessica L. A great question. I can't see it happening. It is a wonderful question. I'm sure there's some agents right now listening / watching. They're like, oh, Jessica, I like the way you think here. There could be a position for you here at our firm.
And we get the finder's fee though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we get a piece here. Where's our cut? CAA, Newport, Wasserman. All right, games on the go around the NHL this evening. There are 4 of them. Brought to you by FanDuel. Proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. Those Buffalo Sabres, Zach, are in action against the Nashville Predators this evening. Vancouver Canucks facing off against the Dallas Stars. Here's the thing. Can the Vancouver Canucks win another game here? Like, did you not think that after that Jim Rutherford Globe and Mail piece came out that it was going to be wheels off the wagon? Completely like, okay, like that's the final straw. Like that was it, the final moment, and now it's just going to crumble.
I did. Fully.
I did too.
And I mean, we were joking about it all, and then they go out and win 3, and it's like, okay, wow, haha, like this is fun. They win another one here. Everyone's in Vancouver starts looking around going, do we suck it up? Should we let it go?
See, what did
this didn't happen?
I was saying this to Sakaris and Price, like at a certain point now, like isn't your trade, because as Rutherford said, like they're not going to get full value for whichever deal they make here. But doesn't this essentially just buy you time? Like I know you have a responsibility to other players on the team, and this is a horrible work environment, I'm sure. And I'm sure Rick Tocchet, well, not that he's pulling his hair out, but he's furious about like what's gone on here, what he has to deal with every day coming to work. But the winning allows them to kick this can down the road.
Yeah.
There's no urgency to it right now if this is quote unquote working, but it's a tough one against Dallas. Although Miro Heiskanen, just like you're crossing your fingers, it's week to week. He ain't playing 4 Nations. You just hope that one of the best NHL defensemen comes back. Just again, we talked about it earlier this week. Just an unfortunate situation, a combination of trip/toe pick with an horrible outcome for Miro Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars. St. Louis Blues face off against the Colorado Avalanche at Ball Arena, and Columbus takes on Utah at the Delta Center. Do you care what the name is at this point? I really wanted Yeti.
No, not really. I mean, honestly.
Mammoth?
Also, quickly.
HC?
What the hell is a Wasatch?
It's gone.
Wasatch?
It's gone.
But what is it?
I don't know. Let's look it up.
Yeah, right? Right? Like, that was the first thing I read it, and I was like, what? Why is that the team? It's a mountain range.
It's a mountain range. Yeah, Mountain Pass.
Why?
Yeah, it's Mountain Pass. Low pass over high range.
Yeah. But, I mean, playing that.
I guess.
Being named that, it's like, oh, okay, I guess. The Mammoth is, by the way, was an NLL team, Colorado Mammoth, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the Gate brothers played for that team, right? The Gates did.
Yeah, I believe so. So, I mean, if they're going to have problems, maybe then they have problems come up there. But at this point, I just don't care. The colors are cool. Yeah. The fan bases seems cool. The owner is cool. Like, everything about it just seems cool. I'm like, I don't care what the name is. Also, actually, you know what I do appreciate, though, by the way, is like they put out that they were going to do the poll to figure out what the names were.
Yep.
And then that was such came up, and basically like no one wanted it. They
replaced it.
Okay, you don't want it, we'll replace it. I was like, that's kind of cool. Like they're listening to the fans. I mean, it probably shouldn't have been in there in the first place, but I thought that was cool. Just a quick that's on us. Let's fix that one. I got a question for you on Canucks stuff here, by the way. If you want to do that, it's over on FanDuel. It was something that made me take a look.
What is it? Yeah,
I'm glad we did do that. I was taking a look at the fact that the Canucks have won a couple of games here and have basically made it clear someone's going. Yeah. It may not be both, but someone's going. And I'm like, they're not out of a playoff spot.
Nope.
Well, who's the one guy there, Jeff, that will be the main reason that they make the playoffs, if they do, if it's a major if they make the playoffs, who's the main reason? Quinn Hughes. Would that not? And he was out earlier in the year, and we saw how much they struggle without him.
Yeah.
That screams almost more than Norris to me, if you get where I'm going.
Oh, Hart Trophy?
You not?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Hart Trophy. 16-1 on FanDuel. I like that.
That is the absolute definition of what the Hart Trophy is. Because we've seen both. Like, sometimes, listen, Leon Draisaitl is having an incredible season. Right?
Yeah.
Remarkable season. And again, every phenomenal season. But have we seen what the Oilers are like without him? And it's almost as if, here's the thing. It's almost as if you should get knocked down a peg if you get injured for 10 games and your team doesn't have a dip. Because then how can you make the argument that you're the most valuable? But we've seen with Quinn Hughes what this team looks like without him. One of the things that I always do with goaltenders for the Vezina, and again, that's voted on by the managers, and so managers look at one column. It's the column with the W on it. That's the only thing that they care about. Whoever gets the most wins gets the Vezina. Discuss amongst yourselves. But the one thing that I always look at for the Vezina is, okay, because we're looking at starting goaltenders, I always look at what's the backup save percentage? What's the starter save percentage and what's the backups? Because if save percentages are more similar than they are different, can you really say that it's all just about that goalie? Or is there more to it?
Am I wrong in that Seulement and Ullmark won the best goalie duo and Ullmark won the Vezina the same year? Was that separate years or was that the same year?
Don't know that one.
I'll look it up. But you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, but it was a byproduct of all of it, of the Boston Bruins defense, the Boston Bruins forward, the Boston Bruins system. The thing about, I remember talking to Connor Hellebuck twice last year, and he said the same thing. He's like, look, I am not playing any different. I am the exact same goaltender. The only thing that's different is how we're playing defense in front of me, and I'm just the beneficiary of it. Now, I think he's being too humble, and he's the best goaltender in the world. But I always kind of looked at that. I always look at that one and go okay, I want to see what the backup save percentage is. Because if it's profoundly different, then I got a lot more time for that guy for the Vezina Trophy amongst the elites.
It was the same year, by the way.
It was, eh?
They won the best goalie duo, and Ullmark
which is called the
Jennings. Is that what it is?
Yeah, the William Jennings. So the NHL. Here's another one that doesn't get a whole lot of concert. Whenever we talk about renaming trophies, it's a lot of times some of the people that the trophies are named after, when we look at it with a historical lens, aren't necessarily the best people we're offering up to the marketplace. Conn Smythe, I'm looking your direction specifically. But when William Jennings ran the Rangers, now the Rangers and the Boston Bruins in the 60s and 70s probably had, late 60s, early 70s, probably had the best rivalry, the vicious rivalry of any teams in the NHL. To the point where, now you tell me whether this is disqualifying or not to have a trophy named after someone that does this. You know what William Jennings did when he ran the New York Rangers? Put a bounty on someone's head on the Boston Bruins. It's like $100 to any player on the New York Rangers. I think it was against Ted Green. Put a bounty on his head. President of the team.
Nice.
Gets a trophy named after him. Is that problematic for you, Zach? Is that an issue for you? Guy putting bounties on. Let's give that guy a trophy. Let's name a trophy after that guy.
Yeah, it's not the
Hockey
best.
Man.
Not the best.
Hey, here's another one. Back to Utah. They named their quarter century team.
Oh, yeah.
Logan Cooley. They're funny about it, right? We know they've only been here a few months, but here are Utah's early standouts. Logan Cooley.
They're funny too.
Dylan Guenther, Clayton Keller, Michael Kesselring. Oh, man, is he good. Mikhail Sergachev and Karel Vejmelka. You know what'd be funny just as a goof? I'm going to give you some homework this weekend. I want you to design an NHL quarter century team for the next Atlanta team, and it's all 13-year-olds. The next Houston team, they're all like 14-year-old
My elite
kids.
prospects is going to be a mess for the next 2 days. And he's searching up minor, I don't know what they are now, but I was going to say minor Adam teams, Pee-wee teams. Yeah.
We're going a little Broadway today, and I want to get in this thing with Irfan Gaffar. Down to Earth, the latest offering from Irfan Gaffar, is out and available. It is a conversation. Irfan Gaffar with Ottawa Senators head coach Travis Green, who, by the way, are you a poker player? Zach, you a poker guy?
A little bit.
See, I'm not much at all, or I shouldn't say much. I'm not at all, but apparently amongst anybody in hockey, Travis Green's the guy. Like the best hockey person in poker. Like he'll go to those Vegas tournaments and just walk out with suitcases full of cash. Anyway, here's noted poker player / NHL coach Travis Green in conversation with Irfan Gaffar.
We've seen players take leaves of absence for personal reasons. We've seen mental health obviously become a huge proponent in the NHL and what different teams are doing with hockey talks and that sort of thing. How much do you and your coaching staff take into consideration if a player's not having a good day, whether it's on the ice or off the ice and things like that? And how much do you talk to your guys when it comes to stuff like that?
Do we talk about mental health a lot daily? No. Yeah. But do we take into consideration where a person is at? Yes. There's times where you might be upset with a player and how he's playing, but maybe you can tell that he already knows it, and you are only adding to the burden, to the stress, is something that you really have to pay attention, because ultimately we're trying to get our players to play the best that they can. And sometimes it's a heavier thumb, sometimes it's lighter, and that's a big art of coaching, I think.
The latest from Irfan Gaffar, Down to Earth, in conversation with Travis Green, available at our Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Any conclusions, observations, thoughts, promotions for your own work tomorrow after the big Oilers game? Oh, no, you're not doing it. You're going to...
tomorrow,
hang on a second
one
here.
day.
Hang on a second here. In the chat the other day after the Minnesota loss, where you're all fired up, I swear you don't get that angry. You got to watch After Dark, folks. And my boy here gets seriously, he goes Bill Bixby, he goes Incredible Hulk when the Maple Leafs lose, especially they did against Minnesota. I was man, you don't get this mad when you vote, Zach, and you're livid about this game against the Minnesota Wild. So on the chat, people are wondering, considering it's Vacation Vic's wedding, the producer of Morning Cup of Hockey, whether you would do After Dark after the Leafs-Oilers game from the wedding. Have you decided not to, you half-miler?
This is more of a question for Vic than me. It's his wedding. I'm not going to go in there and plan to do that. If he wants to do it, he wants to do it. Alberga will be there. Alma will be there. Myself,
come on.
So
who's going to wear the lampshade in that crew? Is it going to be Alberga? Is he the one-man conga line? Is he that guy at weddings?
I don't know. This is the first time I'll go with him. I've been out with him a bunch of times downtown. Alberga is a lot of fun to go out with. I'll say that. There's a chance that I may even see Alberga tonight. We'll say that.
Where are you going? Where are you going tonight? You going out?
Strolling around. Possibly. I've got a hockey game at Maple Leaf Gardens at 9:00.
Oh, at Mattamy. No way.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then may stroll around. We'll see then where the night takes us, Sir Jeff. But
and you're just gonna casually bump into Alberga, or you got something planned already, Snake?
No, usually it's a text later, and it'll say from one of us, and it'll just say "What's up," and then figure it out from there.
All right then. Well, wherever you end up, Zach Phillips, and share this with Nick Alberga. Make good decisions.
Yes.
Make good choices this weekend, young Zach. Make good choices. And congratulations to Vic. So what happened? Did he pull this young woman out of a fire? Was she drowning? How does he find someone? How do you trick someone into marrying him?
No, it's actually funny. And I mean, everybody should be watching all the properties we have. I've said it a few times. I mean, my favorite shows, I would get up. And also Fridays. Like, this maybe is Vacation Vic to the max. I don't know if it's, I feel like Colby and Laz want to work on Fridays and it's Vic who wants it off, but we'll have that discussion. I mean, I try to bike at 9 a.m. and watch the show and these guys aren't going on Fridays. Anyways, I watched that and then I watched Leafs Morning Take. I was laughing this morning because they were talking about it. They had Gord Stellick on today, and they're talking about Vic and his wedding coming up. And Nick was telling a story about how Vic met her, and it was at the bar on King Street West here with Alberga. The two of them went out that night.
Which bar? Which place?
They met her.
I haven't gone to King West forever, but I'm curious.
Two Cats.
No, I never went to. That's right near Hey Lucy. I used to go to Hey Lucy. Two Cats, like right beside Hey Lucy. I know Two Cats. Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, they go there and he met her, and then Gord was saying to Alberga that the reason that Vic stood out so much is because he went out with Alberga, and so Vic stood out.
Great strategy,
a lot.
Vic. Well done.
Alberga. Yeah.
Take Alberga. Like you look awesome. Like every woman will be like, I could end up with that. No. I need to. I need to get a ring on this one quickly. Let's, there've been a couple of people in the chat that want to hear the Chris Falcone story. Can we park that to Monday? That's the guy that fell in the Toronto Maple Leafs penalty box in Philadelphia with Ty Domi. Yep. Let me get to the Chris Falcone story on Monday. How's that for a cliffhanger? Tune in Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern on the sheet to find out Jeffy's story about hitting Philadelphia with Chris Falcone. Awesome dude. Like, seriously, great guy. Like, I don't know if I still have his number. If I still have his number, you want me to get him on?
Yes.
Or you know what? He might be good for you. When are the Leafs playing the Flyers?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know that I don't have his number still. I'll ask my old producer, Jeff Domet. He works at The Athletic. I'll ask him. He'll still have Chris's number.
March 25th, Leafs Flyers.
Do you want Chris Falcone for that show?
Sure, that would be pretty good.
You can do the Domi story.
Yes,
I'll get you Chris. That
would be good.
But I'll tell the story on Monday. How about that? All right.
That's good. Hey, by the way, Burkie, you know how he's got the camera tracking? I'm pretty sure that it was picking up the picture behind him. I think that was why his camera was zooming out. So on your iPad, there's like an AI tracking that can go on. So if you move your head or whatever, it keeps you in the center.
I'm kept picking up Burkie's
99% sure it was picking up the painting. Because that's never happened with him. He moves and it follows him, right? Like, I'm sure people noticed that it was moving, and I think you probably noticed. And I was like, oh no, like, what's going on? Why is this happening? And then as it went, I went, it's getting the painting behind him for sure. 100% it had to be. Because I've never seen it do that with him before.
We had people in the chat saying, like, okay, like, enough playing with the camera here.
But it's not me. I don't do that.
It was just picking up his... Well, that's credit to the artist who did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Of capturing Brian and his Burkeness.
Yeah.
That was some good stuff today from Burkie, too.
Awesome stuff from Burkie, as always.
It was good. Okay, that's it for us. Thanks to Brian Burke for stopping by. Thanks to all of you for joining us all this week. Whether you're in the chat, whether you're listening on your favorite podcatcher, whether you're watching live or an archive on YouTube, whether you're in the chat or you're not, we thank you for your attention. You could be a number of different places, watching, listening, or maybe even actually doing something, but you chose to be with us, and for that, I thank you very much. On behalf of Zach Phillips, he's not on tomorrow, by the way. He's going to be party of one, Zach Phillips at Vic's wedding. We'll get the full time and temp and the recap on Monday on who wore the lampshade during the whole thing. My money's on Alberga, but we'll see what happens. On behalf of the whole crew here, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Much appreciated. Monday, Morning Cup of Hockey, 9 o'clock Eastern, Johnny Lazarus, Colby Cohen. DFO live at noon Eastern, and then the sheet right here at our Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Enjoy the games tonight, Saturday, Sunday. We'll talk to you on Monday. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.